Shwmai, croeso, hello and welcome to episode 46 of the Bluebirds Nest. A special episode this week and a new record for the number of guests I've got joining me. The club have been well supported for many a year, but particularly over the last few years, we have seen that huge increase in support, both home and away, that I know has made a great impact on the field with the players too. The club's official supporters association has been a pillar for many years, raising valuable funds and doing some great things in the community. But we've also seen the introduction and the evolution of the Cleddau Casuals. Initially, I think you were nicknamed the Ultras by many, which, if I'm honest, I don't think everyone was truly fond of. But the Casuals were born, and you've been home and away for many, many months now, following the club across Wales. So delighted to be joined by four of them on this week's episode. So Iestyn, Dan, Steve and Silas, a warm welcome to the Bluebirds Nest.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Ryan.
Thanks for having us, right? Finally.
Well, yeah, finally indeed. As we now go through a few weeks without competitive football, like it was with Waggy last week, I think it was the ideal time to get you guys on to pause, reflect, and I suppose chat through everything that Haverfordwest County is doing on and off the pitch. We've proudly communicated as a club. We've been fan-centric, for a long time now. So having supporter voices such as yourselves on, I have no idea how this is all going to unfold. So before we do get down to business, I just want to say that obviously the views that are expressed in this episode are perhaps they're going to be diverse and they're going to be perspectives from you guys, the passionate fans. So that being said, it's going to be fun and respectful analysis, I'm sure, but it is from a fan perspective rather than perhaps the club's official stance. But I'm sure it won't go too overboard. I'm not looking at anyone in particular. But let's get stuck in then. The Casuals. Dan, I'm going to come to you first. You've used me on a couple of the Nest live audio commentaries a few times already this season, and we've discussed the Casuals' birth a little bit. But tell us, what is the Casuals and what does it mean to you, and what is it?
Well, we sort of got started from I would say a chance encounter when me and Steph started following Haverfordwest County more regularly a couple of years ago with Phil. So Phil is a Man United fan, as a Salford boy, as me and Steph were, and happened to hear us reading scores out. And we got to know him that way, and everyone else has just sort of come in around us from that point on, and it's grown and grown and grown. And then, as you said before, we sort of were maybe known as the Ultras to begin with. But we decided by the end of last season that we were going to set up a Twitter account and wanted a name along the lines of the Covey Army, the Aber Soul Crew, etc. And I think it was actually a conversation I'd had over Easter with our chairman, Mr. Rob Edwards, where he'd suggested perhaps making a play on the Cleddau being, right next to the ground itself. And after a few sort of ideas, we sort of settled on Cleddau Casuals, and then we'd made the Twitter account after the friendly against Carmarthen in pre-season.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, it's certainly grown from strength to strength with that sort of Twitter or X account, as we're supposed to call it these days. But Steve, when I come to you next, then your story started more north of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been really lucky. I've been following Haverfordwest for just 2 years, and already had the opportunity to get out to North Macedonia, which you couldn't really dream of. Like when I first sort of set foot at the into the Meadow Stadium and whatever. But I grew up in. My father's from Festiniog, and he moved to northeast Wales. So I was thinking about this a lot because Silas and I, as you know, we've been putting the West fanzine together. And I was thinking about my football journey. So in terms of watching, my dad's father really wasn't into football at all. And my mother's father was Irish. So I had a Welsh side and an Irish side. And my Irish grandfather actually took me to my first football game, which was watching Coventry City at Anfield way back in the 70s, which was, I've sort of been digging around for memories of that. But then really I spent some time watching Wrexham because it was the closest professional team. But then I spent a lot of time playing football. So, as a sort of like a junior, a young teenager, was playing for Connors Quay. So the Nomads, so there's that connection. They're definitely a better side than they were than when I was playing down there. But a real mixture in terms of how it's all evolved. But I was desperate to watch football, and obviously, living where we do, Haverfordwest was an option. And the moment I set foot, I do remember actually, Steph and Dan and Phil, and sort of hooking up with them and talking about football, and as you said, like it's grown, and obviously some of the younger boys, Iestyn and Silas, have come along, and it's a great sort of feeling on a Saturday, or what will be a few Friday nights coming up. To be with really good people who are very passionate about the club and want to see the club succeed. So it's been great.
Excellent, I love it. And obviously the drum and everything, the flags that have come with it as well. It's really great to see, and you've almost adopted that part of the ground now, particularly at home games, and you're loud and proud. So credit to you all for that. And Iestyn, Silas, two of our younger fans also join us. Yes, I'm loving the European shirt. I'm sure that'll come up in conversation later. But why did you get involved and start supporting the club then? Yes.
It was more back in lockdown, really. There wasn't much football on, and then I remember the first game back, which was about 2021, and it was a friendly against also the Nathaniel MG Cup against Goitre United. So I thought, I'd go and watch that and see how it goes. And ever since that, I fell in love with Haverfordwest.
I love it. Well, it's certainly, as you said, a great time to almost start your journeys with the club. We've arguably the club's best ever calendar year, 2023. And I want to split it in half now if I can. Phase 2 of last season, the playoffs, and obviously Europe being the pinnacle of it all. Emotions across that first half of 2023 were, tense, as we chased 7th spot in the league. Silas, I know I'll come to you on this one. The playoff final, a fond memory of yours to get that 7th spot, to get through Cardiff Met in the semis. And I think you were on telly just as much as the players were that day. You
I was very lucky.
How was May the 13th for you then?
Well, it was an amazing day. The weather was perfect. We got the bus up, which felt like it took ages. It was so hot on there. But once we actually arrived, it was kind of like the perfect day. It was so warm and everything went to plan. But the thing is, when the game was actually being played, I was so nervous. I couldn't enjoy it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was almost when Corey's penalty went in, as well as the amazing sense of achievement. It was relief. Because I've been so nervous that whole day, and I think everyone felt the same.
Yeah, exactly that. Nerves. What about you guys? How did you feel that day? Relief as well?
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, I think even thinking back now, I think all those penalties, it was so tense, but that last one from Sheps almost felt like it went in slow motion. but there was no doubt from the minute it left his boot, it was going in. Yeah. But it just felt like the whole thing was in slow motion.
The minute it left his boot, I was straight over the advertisement boards onto the pitch.
I think half of you would hop the fence before he'd even touch the ball.
Yeah.
I watched that back, the penalty from Sheps a couple of nights ago, and he still has on his Twitter feed, it's his pinned tweet. So irrespective of him, not being with us anymore, it's obviously, a huge moment for him, and I have a story about that because he was a big favourite of mine, Corey Shepherd. I just thought we were a better team when he was playing, and he obviously had a few injury problems and so forth. But after the game, I was in the toilet in the Newtown sort of clubhouse, and stood next to me whilst doing the deed was Corey. And it maybe wasn't an appropriate moment, but I said to him, Corey, like, you're going to be with us next season. Looked him in the eye, like, and said, you're going to be with us next season. And over my shoulder was Tony Pennock, and from the moment Corey sort of said, half-heartedly replied, and from that moment I thought, nah, Corey's not going to be with us next season, which it was really sad. But what a moment when he took that penalty, and as Silas said, as soon as he just the way he walked up, you thought that's going in the back of the net. And just a shout out as well to there's a guy who was like really, for me at least, he was really instrumental in sort of helping me grow my passion for the club. There's a guy called Roland who watched the club for years and years. He's relocated to China, but every Saturday he's helping me learn Welsh. And every Saturday we send messages, and I try and do it in Welsh, And he's still a really passionate fan, even though he's not with us. But I just remember as soon as the ball went in, just hugging Roland for a long time. It was a great moment.
Excellent, I love that. And we're certainly Bluebirds worldwide, I think. And Roland is, I think, an avid listener to the Nest Live, I believe. And to see him continue his love for the club from well away from Wales is great to hear. But I want to pick up on something you mentioned there. Obviously, you were in the toilet, but that just sums up Welsh football, I think. The guy has just scored the winning penalty at a great game. I think he was man of the match as well. He did have a good day all round, I suppose. But that's Cymru Premier all over, because he's just scored the winning goal in the playoff final. Half an hour later, you're in a social environment. I'm not particularly looking at the toilets, but you're in the bar area. You can have that engagement and have that frontline experience. And I think that's a lot about Welsh football that should encourage, I suppose, the sort of maybe the Swansea, the Cardiff fans to almost have a Welsh club team as well. But how do you find that, the engagement with the players face to face and social media?
Yeah, I mean, it's great. Obviously, watching sort of like football at the level that we do, and having that sort of like possibility in the bar to sort of, to say, you had a great game, or like, sort of like how you're feeling. Because, Ricky's a big favourite, and Ricky will always come and have a chat to us. And it's great. But, you talk to Ricky's dad and his the rest of his family, his wife, and they tell you how things are going, and it is brilliant, and it's special. And I think I was talking on last week. I went to the Supporters Association meeting, and Barry Vaughan is the man that sort of leads that group. And I was talking to Barry, and he's got like a huge sort of experience of watching Haverfordwest through some fairly sort of like difficult times as well, and just listening to him, like it's great. Like, and I think one of the things about the fanzine, Silas and I met a while ago to think about how we might sort of develop that. But I think we were keen with Silas's dad as well to make sure we involved like fans outside our group, because as I say, I acknowledge I've only been watching the club for 2 years, so there's been a lot happening prior to those 2 years, and it's I think you have to be respectful to to those people that have been going through some really difficult times. Barry was telling us the other night about the club. You may know about this, Ryan. The club was suddenly faced with a huge tax bill. And for a while it looked like the club was in serious danger of dissolving. So I do appreciate that as a new supporter. That there's a lot of people there that have been following the club sort of around the up and downs through Wales for a long time. And whilst it's great to be able to be in the bar and talk to the fans and other supporters, I think sometimes you have to choose the right moment and make sure. Certainly, if it's not gone the way you'd hope, like the last game against Bala, which it wasn't what we wanted. So I think at that point you tend to sort of like try to hold back a bit. I don't know about the other guys and how they feel about that, but that's certainly how I feel about it. But it is great to have that connection,
I
Yeah.
agree with you, Steve. I think that's amazing. Like, you don't get that in any other league in the world. After you win, like, you can speak to the players and praise them in the clubhouse, and it's such a great thing.
Yeah,
I think-
definitely. Sorry, Dan, go on.
Right, we were saying about you said about Ricky Watts' dad. I know one that has become a sort of an honorary casual with us, at least, is one Dai Abrazazi. He always
Yes.
stops for a chat every week, and
Well-
it's good talking to him about Reese's experiences as well, because like we hear a lot about how when Reese was in Cardiff's academy, with Neil Warnock and stuff there at the time, and players that were there at the time and stuff, and it's generally just quite interesting chatting to him. And of course, he played football himself back in the day as well, back for Newport County, I think it was. So, yeah,
perhaps a future episode guest himself.
Yeah, that has some great stories.
Yeah, no, to be fair, and I think a lot of mums, dads, there's a lot of grandparents who come to the club now, and you mentioned a couple of key individuals there, Steve. Your Barry Vaughns, Barry Webbs, Alan Thomas. They all do an episode themselves because they must have a wealth of stories and experiences from over decades following the club, rightly so. And I think we will get round to them one day. But the face-to-face stuff is great. You know what I really like seeing as well? You've got your Cleddau's account, and you've also got sort of Kian who does that football drawing images and things. It's the players and the staff, to be fair, engage in content, and and you're having those interactions, on the social media. Yes, I know your way around your tech savvy around Twitter and things. And how do you find it when the players respond? You're spending your time putting content on.
Yeah, it's a nice feeling because all the time I see Ivan Knott keeps liking our posts, so it's nice to see that. But even when it's even when we post midweek, still getting likes by the players, even when it's after games or before games, it's nice to see the players engaging with us.
Yeah, no, credit to you, because I know you put a lot of time into the social media stuff, and your sort of upcoming opponents and the sort of ones to watch. There's a lot of research that goes into that, so credit to you. And obviously you're developing your knowledge of the league. Saying that, I think you know which clubs are signing what players before they do half the time. Yes, I'll give you a nod for that one. Let's get on to Europe then. Obviously, the highlight of 2023. Steve, I want to come back to you on this one because I know you've got a fascinating story. Obviously, the logistics with the draw couldn't have been much further away, could it, North Macedonia? But you and Dan, you both managed to get over there. But you in particular, you were city and country on the way over, I think, weren't you?
Yeah, it was a bit complicated because I was desperate to go to the game, but as many people obviously had a diary full of work, and I had to sort of like plan it around that. Obviously post-pandemic, it's possible to do a lot of work remotely, so that was the only way I could really sort of do it. So I spread it over, probably about 8 days, and travelled. I travelled from Port Talbot. I left. I went to Port Talbot to London, and then from London to Frankfurt, and then Frankfurt to North Macedonia. I missed out on some things because some of the boys, they were like, Dan was, I think, in the same hotel as the rest of the players and whatever. Like, but I needed to work for part of the time I was there. That was the only way I could do it. So I ended up like renting a really cheap apartment, but it did have technology in there. So I was spending time like running down the road to the Olympic swimming pool, having a swim in there. I'd come back because you remember how hot it was there,
Yeah,
I'd come back from the Olympic swim pool, do some work in the apartment, and then I'd be out with the boys, meet them, in whatever bar they might be in the centre of Skopje. Yeah, it was great, and I think the friendships and camaraderie from that trip is just something you'll never forget. And again, go back, I just would feel very lucky because speaking again to Barry Vaughan, on that trip, the last time the club had had the possibility to play in Europe was, I think it was 2004. So virtually 20 years. So, potentially could have waited 20 years for that opportunity. So, I think, it was such a wonderful trip. And, it's something I'll never forget, it's something I still talk to all my friends about. And I think, as a group, if it happens again, it'd be great to go because support is even bigger now. And, hopefully it'll be somewhere where everyone can get to. Obviously it's not a cheap, sort of like journey and whatever. Like, so, it does sort of make it difficult for everyone to get there. But, hopefully it will happen again, and hopefully we'll be all together again, and hopefully make some new stories,
Definitely. Well, fingers crossed, it's months rather than years we've got to wait this time, Steve. And the draw goes a little bit in our favour. But yeah, Dan, I think you had a slightly more direct route to Skopje. And one thing, you enjoy telling the story of your self-guided tour the day before the game.
Yeah, so we decided to go for a walk out towards the stadium on the day before because we thought, we'll go and have a look. We'll see what the stadium is, expecting that it would be like the stadiums in this country, in that you'd get to it, maybe do a little lap of the outside and then go home. But we got to the stadium to find that the gate onto the pitch was open, and thought, well, we'll walk in because the worst thing they can do is tell us you can't come in, and we walk out again. But there were two blokes there who could not have been less bothered that we let ourselves into the ground. So we all stood around and had a few pictures on the edge of the pitch. We took ourselves down to test out the seats in the dugout. They were quite comfy, albeit quite hot, I would say. We even managed to get in and have a look at the changing rooms as they were being set up, because I think our changing room was just having the sort of refreshments set up in it at that point, but Skendia were preparing for their training, so their kit man was actually there setting up all their kit ready for their training session, and we basically just walked in and had a look at what was going on. So you think you in this country you wouldn't be allowed to get anywhere near that level of contact with the stadium. You'd probably be branded like a terror threat or something. But, I mean, there was absolutely, it's just the whole country was so laid back. So laid back. I've never experienced anything like it.
In the documentary footage, you could see, I think Yori's filming Harry John literally walk through the gate. That was the gate, wasn't it? We just walked in. Obviously, the players and the coaching staff and everybody else just walked to the centre circle and had a bit of a stroll around. And like you say, nobody seemed to blink. It was just 25 of us walking into the stadium. And obviously, you followed later on in the afternoon. It was so laid back. There was also, and I nearly put it in the documentary, there was a dog running wildly around the stadium as well in one of the training sessions. It just summed up the sort of security risk, well, certainly until those the opposition ultras turned up that evening anyway.
And of course, we can't forget that is Macedonia's national stadium as well. So that's not just like any stadium. It's not like it was, like a the Oval or a Park Avenue or whatever. That was their equivalent of Wembley or the Cardiff City Stadium that we strolled in onto the pitch and just had a wander around.
Fair play, the group that travelled, I think there was probably almost 20 in the end that were in that segregated area, right on the halfway line. You sang your heart out that night, I think, out singing a few thousand that were in attendance for the home team. Even those hostile ultras you really competed with for the 90 minutes. But it's back in Cardiff that I really remember the sort of support. Silas, yes, you sort of joined the European tour and, you were there at Cardiff. Great scenes, particularly after that penalty shootout. I think the pair of you were trying to get over the barrier at one point. But
Silas did get over in the end.
I've got a bit of a story here. So, it was a Scandia player lining up to take the final penalty, and it's Steve's to my right, and my other mate is to my left. And I look to them both and I say, "Are we going on the pitch if we win?" And they both go, "Yeah, we'll go on the pitch." But Zach Jones obviously saves the penalty. I hop straight over the barrier. I'm actually on the pitch. I turn around. I think no one's followed me. So I run straight back over, and I see Steve getting held back by about 3 stewards. And everyone else is just going mental. No one can believe it.
Incredible. I didn't know that.
I seem to recall Steve as well. When Jenkins's goal went in, Steve had ran down from somewhere because I was sat fairly close to the front, and all I saw was this hat come flying past me down through the little gate at the bottom, and the steward going after him, going, "Hang on, whoa, you can't go down there," and grabbing hold of him to bring him back.
Yeah, it's an emotional game, you know.
Part of the experience.
And I think we've spoken about Europe on every single episode ever since of the Bluebirds Nest, and it's still, I find it so hard to actually believe what we managed to do that night, you know, and the difference in budget, in club size. You know, when we met the directors and the staff over there was 50 full-time members of staff involved in that club. You know, the perspective on that is just phenomenal. And like you said, Steve, and everybody I'm sure is the same. Hopefully not once in a lifetime moment, but it's certainly going to be right up there in your lifetime memories, I'm sure, of following the club in years to come.
Well, I'm a Cardiff City fan, and I was lucky enough to be there when Ollie Tanner scored against Swansea. But I still didn't celebrate as much that day as I did when Lee Jenkins scored. I definitely celebrated the Lee Jenkins goal more. I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah, good man, Silas.
That's what Haverfordwest does too, see?
Yeah.
Let's flip it then. The tail end, the second half of 2023, the phase one period in particular of this season. Then, I think the term European hangover has been bandied about by many people, from TV pundits to those inside the club and the fan base and things like that. And some people agree, some people disagree. Obviously, we've been unlucky with injuries, but for those of you, you know, living and breathing the club on a daily/weekly basis now, the elusive top 6 spot got away from us a couple of 10 days ago now, I suppose, and almost a fortnight ago. But what are your thoughts then? I'm throwing this open to the floor. What are your thoughts on phase one, guys? Sum it up for us.
I think it's fair to say it was a slightly inconsistent start. And, you know, there was that European hangover, but there was also the fact that, you know, half the players hadn't played together in the league before. And the Cymru Prem is quite different to what some of the players used to, you know, with it being a physical league. And we did have that slightly inconsistent start. And I think Tony Pennock said it really well when we were struggling with form. He said that certain players were playing as individuals rather than a team. And that's why we achieved so much in Europe and in the playoffs and in phase 2 in the 2023 season. Is because we played as a team and we played so well together. That's why we achieved so much.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Silas has said there. I think the first 10 games, did we win 2 out of the first 10? We're not going to be critical because, certainly in terms of the staff and the management, and, you can see what they're trying to achieve. And I think Tony Pennock and the rest of his staff are great. But I think there were factors that definitely made it more difficult. I think we had the European thing is not just the few games. I imagine they were training throughout the summer. They didn't have a break. The whole emotion connected with those 4 games. You know, as a fan, it was it was emotional and draining. So you can times that by whatever, as a player. So I do think that, you know, as a player, having been through that experience, it must have been challenging to start the season without having a proper break. And of course, also there was transition because we lost a lot of players for different reasons. We've talked about Corey and Jordan. Jordan, 15 to 16 goals. Corey, I think he was the glue in midfield when he was fit. So there's the transition because then there's a lot of new players coming in, and then I think we've been so unlucky with injuries. I didn't go to the game. I'm pretty sure some of the guys here did, but the game, the pre-season friendly when Dylan was injured, as soon as I heard that news, I was on the floor because we know what a huge player Dylan is for us, not just on the pitch, but his leadership. And I think that has been such a again, I don't want to be critical, but we've missed Dylan's leadership hugely, and I imagine Dylan as a character, in that dressing room. We've all played football. There's people in dressing rooms that really make a difference, and I can imagine Dylan being one of those people. So and obviously Jazz has been injured for much of the season. Pat Scotcher. and then we hit a bit of form, and then Rio got injured. So I think it's been difficult, for those reasons. But ultimately, if you win 2 games out of the first 10, you've got a mountain to climb. And we haven't conceded a lot of goals, but I think we've scored, is it about 28, 29 goals? So we haven't scored a lot of goals. And I was looking the other week at the table when we were thinking about trying to get 6. And I think at Bala, they have managed to win a lot of games by 1 goal, because they've scored even less than us, but they've conceded, I think, maybe 20 goals. So obviously there are different ways to win football matches. We all know that. But I think transition. I think the post-European sort of thing and hugely sort of difficult issues in terms of losing really key players has had an impact.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you've just said there, and I think it's fascinating because 75 minutes into the Bala game, we're we're in the top 6. We're 3 points off 3rd in the league at that point. And it just, you can't help but look back and think, what if, things had gone a little bit more on our side, a little less injuries and things. You named 4 key individuals here: Dylan, Elliot, Jazz, and Pats. They're 4 of the spine. Not only do they play centrally in their positions across, on the park, they're 4 great leaders and experience. They're, 4 of the oldest in the squad as well. And if you look at the average age, we're well below some of the other clubs as well. So lots of factors add up. But Dan, I come to you next. What were your thoughts on phase 1?
Yeah, I think from a sort of psychological point of view as well, because after the Skendia game, everyone was on such a high. And even after the sort of the issues out in Tórshavn, it was only a 2-1 loss. I think there was hope that maybe, we could do it again. And it looked like we maybe could do it again until the incident. And I think, if we'd have come back and lost 5-0, I think you'd have said, fair enough, on the day, we weren't good enough, better team won. But I think losing that game the way we lost it, it just knocks the wind right out your sails. Any sort of momentum you've picked up is gone. You've got to pick yourself up and go again, because for some reason that only the FAW know, they decided to make us play the Nathaniel MG Cup game like 4 days later or something as well. So that didn't help against Cardiff, which would have been a tough game as it was. Yeah. And then going into the season, we had, I think it was Pontypridd and Penabont were our first 2 games, was it? Who are 2 teams that we always struggle against. Penabont, I think we have had the better of on a couple of occasions, but they're always close, tough games. Pontypridd,
especially away.
Yeah, so once you've got that all sort of built up into the start of your season, any momentum that we could have carried through from Europe is gone, and you're having to sort of pick up and almost start afresh again. But unlike when you've got pre-season, you've got time to be able to dust yourself off, pick yourself up and go again. You were going from week to week, having to do the same thing basically, while trying to sort of get the team going. And I think probably that's the biggest, that's what I think was, along with the injuries, that was probably one of the bigger things that probably hindered us a bit going into the start of the season. Lots
of factors then, and trying to flip it then. Yes, I come to you. Phase 1, when you look back, what are the sort of positives that stand out for you then?
I think in Barry away, I think that was the 3rd game of the season, was it? I think we went up there and it was just such a poor game, and then the last 10 minutes, I don't know what happened, but yeah, it was just unbelievable. And there's been a few games where I think, we've played well, but not got results in.
Yeah, and we'll come on to phase 2 conversation shortly, but you've mentioned Penabont and Pontypridd were obviously in the bottom 6 with us. Both of those clubs, I think a lot of people, again, talking S4C pundits, etc., had identified both of them. Penabont had a European campaign like this. Pontypridd that strengthened somewhat. We've mentioned Sheps joining them, and a lot of teams sort of perhaps haven't performed as well as they've wanted on the pitch, and we'll face them in the second half of the season. But before we get to that, I want to talk about the split, because I think it's been a bit of a hot topic recently on social media and things like that. And it tends to be annually in January or near the end of January the conversation comes up. TNS are, you know, on a unbreakable grasp of the league title. You know, it's almost a foregone conclusion now. Unfortunately, I suppose, for all the others. But I do think the split still offers a bit of excitement to fans who are avid followers and the new sort of new recruits to the Cymru Premier, you know, following it. But there's going to be an almighty battle for third place. I still think that top six is, you know, those fighting for third place are, you know, going to take it to the wire, I think. We've mentioned Pontypridd and Barry now strengthened recently. There's another battle for seventh. Relegation, my prediction keeps changing on a game-by-game basis. I think it's going to go down. That's another exciting part of the season. But what do you think of the split then, guys? Where's the sort of, is that the right sort of approach, or does the league need to be a bit more, you know, a traditional season-long league approach?
It's a tough one to sort of work out, because I think the main issue with Wales generally is that the league is quite definitively split, with aside from, I think it's Aberystwyth and Newtown, in teams along the M4 and teams across the top of North Wales. And the travel to and from both sets of the North and South teams isn't the most straightforward. So this year is a little bit unique in that we've almost got a near perfect North-South split, which I've never seen happen. Colwyn Bay are the odd one out with us, and I think Cardiff Met are the odd one out in the top six. So it'll be interesting to see what supporter numbers, attendances in games will look like, because for me, I found the biggest issue is the travel to and from. Like, you know, we'll get a decent home crowd, but, you know, we like a trip up to Caernarfon, but we never see much more than 15, 20 max fans up there, which I'd imagine is probably still pretty good for the Cymru Prem in travelling fans over that distance. But, you know, there's a reason why I think the Cymru South and Cymru North generally get, on average, slightly bigger crowds for those sorts of games, is because the travelling is less. So there's something to be said for that. But I don't know. I personally would like to see more teams in the league. I think 12 teams, you know, it's usually around about the same teams you're looking at going down, coming back up year on year, or it has been. I think this year maybe might look a little different if potentially, say, Britain Ferry and maybe Holywell or someone come up. You know, we'll see a couple of different teams. But, you know, Airbus have been up and down. Druids have been up and down. Llanelli have been up and down. I'm trying to think who else now. Well, Carmarthen used to be mainstay and obviously down at the moment. So start of every season, you can normally pick who you think are going to be the ones that are going to be down the bottom end and the ones that are likely to come up. So it has become a little bit predictable. Yeah. So whether a slightly bigger league would maybe add a bit more variety, I don't know. I think a lot of people seem to be in favour of maybe expanding the league. But I don't know then how viable a split would be if the league was to be expanded to a 14 or a 16 team league.
There's lots of pros and cons, I suppose. What about you, Silas? What are your thoughts on the split?
I agree with Dan when he says that it'd be nicer to have a bigger league. And I disagree with you though, Dan. I think 7 teams, if you add like 2 more teams, it's 14 teams in the league. And I think if you still do the split, so 7 teams on each split, that's only 12 games, so I still think it's like a viable thing you can do.
Interesting. Yes, what about you?
Yeah, I think I agree with the split because, you know, it's fair enough. Like if you play bottom 6 and you finish in the bottom 6, then you deserve you deserve to play against the bottom 6. But then with the travelling and all that, well, luckily for us, like we're only travelling south mostly. But then, if say now you're Cardiff Met, you've got to travel up to North Wales most weeks, and that's not something you want to do. But yeah,
there's a lot of pros and cons again, isn't it? Steve, where do you up with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously one of the critical factors is finance, and I obviously we don't. Well, I certainly don't know the finer detail in terms of how the Welsh FA could support, but for me, with a bit of support financially, I personally would like to see 16 teams playing each other twice. without.
And would you still want to see a split if there was 16
No, I
teams?
wouldn't. But look, I'm an old boy. I'm like, traditional, sort of like, football league without like, any gimmicks. But I think there's certainly ambition in the Cymru north and south. I know that Flint, they're doing really well. Airbus are doing really well. I mean, Airbus. I'm not sure I should say this on here, but I was quite surprised at how poor Airbus were when they were in the league last year. But we had a great away day at Airbus, and I ended up at the captain's house because it was his final game after however many years, and they were having a big party. But yeah, that's another story. But I no, for me, I'm 16 teams, and I'd like each team to play home and away 32 games and take it from there. TNS will, as it stands, they will win the league whatever format it's in, and then you're looking at, in my view, sort of gimmicks to try and keep the league interesting. But if you really support a club, you go and watch them. Certainly, I get Dan's point in terms of away games. I've not been to so many away games, and sometimes it's difficult. But that's another issue because of public transport and so forth in Wales. Is not great. Although our friend on social media, Iestyn, he seems to manage to get to all games on public transport.
Yeah.
But so I think. I love Yes to bits, but I don't actually really dislike TNS because I think, apart from I don't dislike them from a football perspective. I don't like the fact they don't play in Wales, but a team that's played 22 games and won 20, and they've scored, I don't know, like it's getting on for 80 goals and conceded less than 20. You've got to take your hat off to them, I think, from a football perspective. And you know what? When they played down at the Meadow recently, I thought we matched them for a lot of that game. We just ran out of legs, and a bit of physicality would have helped, but and obviously being a bit more clinical when we had chances. But I think. For me, and I know this isn't popular, but the league's got to catch up with them. If we're really aspirational about the Cymru Premier being what it should be, we've got to, try and catch up with them. And I know that's difficult, and I know it's, there's all sorts of, factors which make it very difficult. But that's my view.
Yeah, and they're all interesting views to hear your perspectives, having followed it for years or more recent. It's fascinating. The Cymru North and the Cymru South, I think those chasing the title in both those leagues, it's going to go down to the wire. They are really exciting. So you can see why they get good crowds, because they haven't got that distance of travelling. I think, Dan, you mentioned, Cardiff Met every other week are going to be going to North Wales now. And don't get me wrong, I'd love to be in the top 6. And you take your hat off to them for achieving that. But that's a big commitment for the club. And likewise, Colwyn Bay, I feel for them having to come down to the south every other week. Obviously, I'm including Aberystwyth in the south, but it's still a trek to go. And I think they've been a credit to the league this year, Colwyn Bay. They're certainly the biggest away followings that have come to the Augie Bridge Meadow. And they were a great bunch when they came down, and when they were very hospitable when we went up to them. So I'm almost glad there's Colwyn Bay coming back to visit, because they're a welcome addition to the league. But
Ryan, what is the vision for the Cymru Premier League? Because that's the critical question.
It is, and Mr. Noel Mooney, the CEO of the FAW, I think last summer announced that there was these new pillars. I think he referred to them. They'd been rumoured for a long time. There's been a huge audit of the league over the last 18 months, and all the clubs engage with it and give views and opinions, from secretaries to board members, etc. And there was real excitement about the announcement. And for whatever reason, I'm unaware what it is, it's been massively delayed, I think, because it was on. I think he was interviewed at half time at a game. I believe it was the Wrexham Ladies game that was a big sort of massive record-breaking attendance. I remember seeing some of that game, and he was interviewed at half-time and said, you know, the pillars are going to be announced very, very soon, and we're still waiting to see what their proposals are. And I wonder whether that is a 14 or a 16 league season. You know, so I don't know what the vision is yet, but you know, sit and wait patiently, I suppose, is the message at the moment, unfortunately.
I mean, the Welsh Premier always used to be 16 teams anyway, I think, wasn't it? The old Welsh Premier League, before they changed to the Cymru Premier, the format it is now.
Yeah. The League of Wales and things like that. You know, there was almost a good split between North and South and Mid Wales. You know, you got the Welsh Pool and I think Rhyad over there, Oswestry. You know, you had a lot of not Oswestry, sorry, Casuals. You know, teams in the middle of the country that almost broke the travelling up a bit. They've sort of gone down the leagues, fallen by the wayside somewhat. But anyway.
I think looking at the North and South this season, though, because normally the North and South over the last few years have been a one-horse race. Colwyn Bay won it at a canter, went up. Airbus won it at a canter, went up. Barry last year won it at a canter, went up. This year you've got 3 decent-looking sides, top of the Cymru North with Airbus, Flint and Holywell. You've got the same in the Cymru South with Britain Ferry, Llanelli. If you're going to promote more than one team, now is probably the time to do it.
Yeah, you're right. And I think there's another team, I can't remember off the top of my head, up in Cymru North, in 4th place, that they're not out of the race as well.
So it's Mould, is it? Is it Mould?
Yeah, I think you're right. It could be Mould, actually. Yeah, you know, looking at that league table, there's a lot of games in hand. Holywell, I think, mathematically can go top. And again, teams that have been there in the past. I'm aware of a gentleman who used to be the manager of Holywell, and you know, he tells me great stories of that time that they were at the top. So exciting. Obviously, in the south, you've got Britain Ferry again. We're you know, they're a couple of points ahead of Llanelli, Carmarthen, and I think Ammanford are in the mix. You know, right up there. But it'd be great to have a bit of an A40 derby in the future. You know, with Carmarthen and teams like that getting back. But I'm certainly going to sit on the fence for my next question from a club perspective. But you guys are allowed your opinion on this. But I want to know who you think is going to finish 3rd, who's going to finish 7th, and who's going to be in your bottom 2. I'll give you a second to think about it, but yeah, 3rd place first. Who's going to get the final automatic? Assuming that is Connors Key don't fall off a cliff, and you know, because I think they're a good distance apart from 3rd place. Dan, I come to you again on this one. Who's 3rd?
Do you know? I think 3rd's probably the hardest one to call of the lot. But I'm going to stick my neck out and go perhaps Caernarfon. I think the way they managed to secure that 6th spot on the final day, I think perhaps will give them a bit more momentum than perhaps what Met and Bala and all have to get that 3rd spot. I'm going to stick my neck out and go for the Covies there, I think.
I was going to say the Coffee Army would be all over that. They'd be big fans of that, Stuart, right? Silas?
For 3rd?
Yeah.
They've got a lot of travelling to do, but I think they're going to do it because they're such a hard team to play against. Well, whenever we play them, they are. So I'm going to go Met 3rd.
Okay. Good for the South anyway. Steve?
Oh, it's a really tough one. I agree with the boys here. I think it's really hard. I like what Dan said about Caernarfon because they've been a team that has scored a lot of goals. They've scored, I think, about 40 goals, which is, you know, it's really impressive. But I just think Newtown had a shocking start and they didn't end the league well. And I'm not sure of the finer detail of why. But for me, I think Newtown would be, if I was putting money on it, I'd go Newtown or possibly Bala.
It's fascinating. Yes, they're going to come to you last now, but we've got 3 separate teams. And you're right, Dan, you mentioned 3rd is such a hard decision and a hard prediction, I suppose. But yes, bring us home for the final prediction.
I'm going to go with Silas here. I'm going to go Cardiff Met. I think the way they play is just really tough. And when we play them, we struggle. But with their travelling, I think they're going to make it quite a hard game for everyone in the top 6. So,
but yes, you know how you feel about TNS. I feel exactly the same about Cardiff Met.
Interesting. I'll leave you to chat about that between yourselves, I think. I won't open that can of worms. What about 7th then, Dan? Are we going to make it into 7th?
I think so. I think we can. The one that would worry me more so, I think, looking at the bottom six, rather than Penabont, would be Barry. I think Barry have recruited quite well and seem to be picking up a bit of form, but we seem to win fairly comfortably last time, albeit via a red card. I think from one. It seemed, there was a few sketchy moments, but it wasn't a game I was overly worried about. Put it that way. Compared to the away game up there. But I think they're probably going to be I reckon they're going to be the biggest challengers. But I fancy ourselves to finish in that 7th spot.
Okay, Silas?
I agree. I think the Bluebirds are going to finish in 7th 2 years in a row. And I also think we're going to go undefeated at the Meadow.
Oof, big calls. Well, there's some brilliant Friday nights ahead of us with that. And we'll talk about that shortly. Steve, how about you?
Look, it's got to be the Bluebirds, hasn't it? But Penabont and Barry are going to be tough. So, again, I agree really with Dan in that sense. I think Penabont, they have lost out at the expense of Carnarvon. And again, I suppose it depends on these clubs what capacity they have to bring in what they need to give them that extra bit of edge in the second phase. And I don't know whether we will or whether those two clubs will. And for us, obviously, it's about getting some of those players fit. But obviously, the likes of Dylan is not going to be fit. So I think it's going to be really tough.
Yeah. Yes, I'm assuming your beloved Bluebirds, you think they're going to finish 7th?
Yeah, definitely. I think the only game I think will be definitely really struggle against. I think will be either Pontypridd away or Penabont away, and I think all the rest, I think are winnable games. But except from that, I reckon we'll get 7th place.
I think phase 2 is the day we finally beat Ponty away.
I love the optimism and the belief that we can do it, but like I said, I'm sitting on the fence completely. However, I will say I don't think there'll be an easy game in phase 2. There's such strong opposition for the first time in as many years I can remember. I think I said it. There's no whipping boys, and I say that respectfully to teams that have been 12th of the last few years, who've have been winless and have been on terribly bad luck, sort of streak in results. But anybody can beat anybody, and I think that's what makes it exciting now going into the phase 2. Obviously, I want to, and I believe we can finish 7th, but it isn't going to be easy. I'd love to see us be undefeated at the Meadow. I think 5 wins at home won't be far off seeing any team through that 7th spot, because there's going to be teams dropping points when they're not perhaps predicted to. And yeah, I wouldn't like to be a bookmaker in the next few weeks, because I think they're going to be losing a lot of money home and away for teams. But okay, and again, I'm certainly not calling this because I physically can't, I don't think. But who be the bottom 2 at the end of the season? Because, well, mathematically, it could be anybody.
I think I'm going to go Pontypridd. We know what's gone on with Pontypridd, so I think that'll probably come on and they'll struggle in the second half of the season, I think, and they'll probably stick down the bottom now because I think they'll struggle to kick on. And I think Aberystwyth, they've ridden their luck so many years in a row now. I think Colwyn Bay looked to be picking up an all right string of form towards the end of phase 1. And, well, I mean, as you said, anything can happen in this phase 2. I mean, we could see everyone swap positions by the end of it. But I don't know. I can't see Aber sticking to it this year. I'll go Pontypridd and Aberystwyth, I think.
Okay. Silas?
I'll go Ponty, and Dan said somehow Aber get away with it every year. And I think they might do it again this year. But just because I like Bay a bit more, I'll say Ponty and Aber.
Okay. Steve?
Well, I'm not going to deviate. I think Ponty, as we know their story this season, look, Aber, we don't seem to beat them very often, but I know we did at home, but we played poorly at Aberystwyth a couple of weeks ago. But I do think that this time they will go.
Yes.
Yeah, I think definitely Ponty. I reckon. I don't think I can see them staying up, but I think Aber or Colwyn Bay. But I'm going to go with Aberystwyth.
interesting. Like I said, purely your perspectives, fan perspectives. I'm not lighting any torch papers for those clubs to take this as ammunition. It's fascinating. I neither agree nor disagree with a lot. You've got new manager just this week announced to Pontypridd, who knows the league extremely well. I think, for him to come in and potentially transform it, I can see Ponty easily getting out of it just as much as I can see Aber, Colwyn Bay. Honestly, it's going to be so intense and dramatic, I think, right to the death. That's what makes it entertaining, I think, for a neutral or for a supporter of any of those clubs. But yeah, like we said last week, strap yourselves in for what phase 2 is going to bring. More close to home then, let's talk what's coming from the Cleddau Casuals in the next few weeks. Silas, I'm going to come to you with this. You've teased it across social media in the last few weeks now. A bit of a blurred image going up that, as you can see, that we've put on screen. Steve's mentioned that he's dropped into conversation a little bit tonight, but what's coming from the Casuals over the next few weeks, Silas?
So we are releasing a fanzine called West that will be out on the 15th of March when we play Aberystwyth at home. And it was Steve's idea initially. He's been going on about it for a year or two now, but I'm obviously applying for college at the end of this term, and the course I was applying for, I needed evidence of work, and this fanzine Steve's wanted to do for a while kind of fits it perfectly. And obviously with a focus on Haverfordwest, local football, Welsh football, and just football in general, and the passion from fans, me and Steve have come together, as well as other people. I know Dan's contributed, I know Iestyn's helped contribute, as well as many others. Phil, lots of people have helped. You've helped yourself, and yeah, we'll be releasing it on the 15th of March, and we're all very excited about it. Definitely.
I think it's a tremendous idea, but like you said, that backstory to how it's come about, I think that sums up your togetherness as a little community, I suppose, with the Casuals. Yeah. Like you said earlier, Steve, people with different backgrounds and ages, as you can see, coming together for that greater good of the club almost. So really excited to see that. And I believe proceeds will be donated to a local good cause. I don't know whether we're ready to announce that one, Steve, but
yeah, definitely. Yeah. Add just a little bit to what Silas said, because his dad's been great as well. Don't forget your dad, Silas.
Yeah.
who's basically put the cover together for us, and also a great sticker which will be free with the first copy.
Wow.
So sticker in every issue.
Yeah. So Silas's dad has been a great help as well. But yeah, one of the things that we're going to include, as Silas said, it is about, it's going to have stuff about Haverfordwest and Welsh football, but also it's football generally. The culture of fanzines, people who buy them tend to be like, football, crazy, like, so it's going to sort of have that broad sort of spectrum. But one of the things I wrote, because I went to the same school up in Northeast Wales as Gary Speed. And, I don't know, some of the boys here are too young maybe to remember it vividly, but, that Saturday morning when Gary Speed was on BBC, talking about football the way he did, and he was great, like, and, obviously became our national manager, and then the day after, we lost Gary Speed, which, still today, like, makes me feel, it's just so shocked by it. And, and there was a great thing done by Dan Walker, the BBC journalist. And he talked about Gary Speed and about mental health issues. So when I was doing this thing on Gary Speed, it's only a short piece, but, I then started thinking about mental health issues in males, and if you look at the statistics, it's particularly sort of pertinent to think about then, how males get help, and give the boys a lift. The charity that's based in Haverfordwest, we thought, Silas and I think was it Friday we talked about it.
Friday.
We thought, look, we don't really know we don't know if anyone's going to buy this fanzine yet, but like if we manage to, get rid of them, it's not there to make a profit. So we thought, like, if we do make anything, we'll give the proceeds to give the boys a lift. I think I'm not sure who was on the bus, but we were going up. I think was it possibly to Newtown last year, or maybe Aberystwyth. And one of the guys who played for us in the past, Greg,
that's right,
was doing one of the fundraising events that give the boys a lift, engage with. And he got on our bus, he hitched the lift, and we took him up a bit further north, and he was heading to Wrexham, actually. We know that the cafe is now opening in the centre of Haverfordwest. So, we quite like to get them involved.
Yeah, definitely. And you speak, Greg, a former player, is one of the guys who run that brand. Well, they've moved, haven't they? They've come down to the centre.
Yeah, right in the city centre now, or the town centre, rather.
The city centre, I love it.
Not quite St. David's.
Obviously, their coffee shop funds then for counsellors and great work to do in the community, supporting mental health awareness and things like that. So excellent. I love it, guys. Fair play. Credit to you for giving up your time and your efforts to write these articles, and really look forward to seeing how well that does, because I'm sure it will sell out. People will be really keen to get involved in that. So look forward to that. The final question now then, and I think I was going to start a civil war between the Casuals if I'd have asked you to pick your own five-a-side dream teams as we've done on previous episodes. So I've avoided that one. But what I'm thinking, January transfer window time. Now, put yourself in Tony Pennock's shoes. If you were looking to recruit, now, I'd love to ask you who your picks are from the Cymru Premier, but I think we'll rile up a couple of other managers across the league. So what I want to know, look at the English Premier League. What type of player do you think we need at the club at the moment? So, for example, I'd probably go for a silky playmaking number 10 like Kevin De Bruyne, but obviously we don't need him. We got Harry John instead, So, what type of player do you think would fit into our squad at the moment? And Dan, I'm picking on you. Who would be your Premier League type of player to come into us as a club?
I think I'd go for someone like maybe like a Rodri sort of controlling midfielder, because I think our midfielders are all quite dynamic. So Tyrese, Kai, they're good with the ball at their feet, running with it. Harry's obviously better in the final third. Watsy, when he plays in midfield, is a good ball winner. Aiden, Maka, when he plays in midfield, he's a ball winner. But there doesn't seem to be, I suppose Dylan probably would fill that role potentially if he were available. That player who can just sort of break play up, but then sit and pop passes around and sort of dictate the tempo of a game. That's the one sort of midfield profile I personally think we seem to sort of lack.
Yeah, good reasoning. Like that. Great player as well, obviously being a Man City player. And being a Man City
killed me to say it, but
Silas, what about you?
I think I'll go for a number 9. At times when we played well, we sometimes weren't quite clinical enough. So I think a goal scorer that's great one-on-one, but also good at hold-up play. So if we play with wingers, like Jack, we can bring him into the game. Right. And I think we lack a bit clinical. So that'll improve with a number 9. Okay, Steve.
Well, like I said earlier, the first game I ever went to was to watch Coventry City, and I think Coventry and the Bluebirds have had a similar sort of run into the season. Coventry lost at Wembley in the playoffs. Haverfordwest had the European adventure, so they're both on a down. And then Coventry sold Gokares, who was scoring lots of goals, and also Hamer, who was a midfield a bit similar to what Dan was asking for, but with leadership and aggression. And I'm not going Premiership because I don't watch it. It's not. There's no interest of to me. So I'm going Gokares for the goals and Hamer for the imagination, the aggression, and the leadership.
Okay, I'm sure people watching this will be Googling and YouTubing those two now to see what they're like. But yeah.
Well, one of them's in Portugal, and I think he's the top scorer, Gocares.
Okay.
And the other one,
Gyökeres,
Hamer, ended up, he left and went to Sheffield United.
Yeah. Okay. And the other fella who's been in the news recently, he's at Forest Green Rovers and is on the way down, is he?
Oh, Dabo.
Yeah.
Well, Dabo was great for a few seasons, but he got a few injuries, and he's never really picked up from that.
Been interesting. Mr. Troy Deeney's been saying about him, and
probably not the best way to keep your job. Talking about players in that way.
A couple of hours, let alone days later, he's out of the job, and it's no wonder. It's a tricky role to balance as a manager. But okay, just to bring it home, then, who's your transfer recruit?
I'd say the same as Silas. Some like number 9 that can hold the ball up and get the wingers in, and someone with experience. That's either played in the league for quite a while or who knows the league very well. But yeah, I'm going with the number 9.
So basically, what you're saying, Erling Haaland needs a phone call, then, is it, to bring him down? I love it. Fair play, guys. Appreciate it. It's been great to chat. I'm really looking forward to the fanzine. As I said, the Cleddau Casuals are doing some really good stuff on social media, obviously, but in the community as well to do that. Alongside, I must say, the club supporters association, who as well do lots for the players, the staff. The bingo night at Christmas, I couldn't make it myself, but I was led to believe it was a really successful night. So it's great to see that the community around the club are doing the best they possibly can. Keep banging the drum, I suppose I leave it on, and singing your songs. I think you all know which one my favourite is. I won't ask you to repeat it. It's a family show. But, roll on Aberystwyth when we'll be hearing that song for the next time now. Still a couple of weeks away, but yeah, look forward to seeing you up at Park Avenue Friday the 2nd of February.
Under the lights.
My birthday.
Love it. Well, fingers crossed we can give you 3 points that night, Dan. But yeah, guys, appreciate your time. Safe travels up to Aber if I don't see you beforehand, and I look forward to watching phase 2 with you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, cheers.